So next we're going to jump over to France, and because of colonization, France had become extremely wealthy. So here I show you Louis XIV, and you can see from this portrait of him, this is 1701, how opulent he was. He's got the, all this material of this giant robe he is wearing. He's got this wig that he has on. He's got his, this is the style at the time, men wearing tights with heels. Very, very high fashion for the day. So he's showing himself like this. Louis XIV, he squandered, tons of money while people were starving in the streets. But from the art perspective, we like him. So that's a bad thing. But from the art perspective, we like him because he put a ton of money into the arts. And he was actually a dancer when he was younger. He danced in the ballet, but it's not ballet like what we think of today. At the time period, it was only men that were dancing, and they were wearing like stockings like this with heels. So very different from what we think of today. But by the time he was around 30, he ends up stopping the dancing, and we don't know if it was because at that time he just had more duties as the king and he didn't have the time to dance, or also he became rather fat. So he maybe was too fat by then to dance, or maybe a combination of both. But one of the things he's most known for is creating Versailles. So we have in Paris the museum, the Louvre, which you probably have heard of. That was the palace of the king. But he didn't really like being in Paris all the time. So a couple hours outside of Paris, he builds this palace. And once again, you can see that, the kingdom is making tons of money off of colonization, but they're not spreading the wealth with the commoners. Instead, they're building these ridiculously lavish things like this palace. So this becomes the summer palace for the king. And we're looking actually at the back of it, at the reflection pool. And this is Neptune, the god of the sea. So here we are looking at it looking down at it, so you can kind of get an idea here. So here, this is the main palace. And then these are all gardens. This was one of the reflection pools that we were looking at, just to kind of give you a reference of size. There's a pond, there's it's just a crazy amount of money that went into this. There's a whole nother complex back here of houses that were used to house other guests and the mistresses of course, these men that would come to the palace and the king himself. The most famous of the rooms in Versailles is this hallway. And this is called the Hall of Mirrors. And the reason why it's so famous is because we've had a number of very important documents signed here. Most notably, the Treaty of Versailles was signed in this hallway. So the crystal chandeliers, of course, are really expensive. Mirrors were very expensive at this time. So all of these are mirrors. That's why it gets named the Hall of Mirrors. And then these are windows. And then, you have this amazing art on the ceiling, and all the gold is gold. It's all gold. So we see, again, just the extreme wealth of the monarchy and how they are spending it on this kind of luxury. And the last person I'll show you from the Baroque is Nicolas Poussin. And what he is doing here is he's kind of making a prediction. So he's making a prediction that, all great empires eventually fall. So he's got this obelisk in the background, and he's got kind of like the Greek Roman ruins here, making a reference to like Rome was great, Greece was great at one point, these great nations or these great empires that both fell, right? And then he has this guy down here who is St. John, and he's got his halo on, and he's writing here, sketching here. And so this reference to, maybe the French government at the time isn't really doing exactly what they should be doing with this money. It needs to be spread out a little bit more. People need to have food. If you starve your people, eventually they're going to rebel. And we will see that in a little bit, that the way the commoners are being treated in France at this time period leads to the French Revolution.